much for joining us.
Absolutely.
Ben, you had no choice. You had to be here. But, but Keith, thank you for joining. Okay. So I've done a little bit of research. Actually looked at Forrester papers and things like that. I'm going to start talking about AI strategy and business strategy. And at Kung Fu, and I believe Ben believes that an AI strategy isn't an AI strategy. It's a strategy that should support your business strategy. It's an extension of a company's business strategy, not a separate initiative. So Keith, from Forrester's research and where you sit and all the clients that you talk to, where do you see executives getting this right or missing the mark?
We're still early on, but all the tables actually touched on the things that are the most challenging, which is your culture's not ready for it. There's not enough regulatory scrutiny put in place to actually manage the AI. Trust is a huge barrier. There's in this tension between efficiency and effectiveness. What are you going to do with AI? And the companies that are getting it right, and there's not many of them. We look at our executive sample, only 10% are realizing real gains out of AI. They're the ones that are they're bringing together their leadership teams and actually having a federated or a very comprehensive transformation strategy. Coming out of pilot purgatory and moving into a real transformation effort, which it feels like every 10 years we're going through transformation. But in this case, the people talked about it, the acceleration is just, crazy. So getting the executive teams on board and focusing on real returns, real applications, so you aren't in that pilot purgatory. All of our data says that particularly on a technology decision, there's 4 or more buyers that are involved in these decisions. So you can find your C-suite getting caught in a loop with something like this where nobody can decide what to prioritize, hence that's where the executive teams goes like, well, we need to save money. We need productivity out of it. And that's usually the wrong answer right away because it doesn't yield a full out strategy to get to that top line growth that people were talking about. You're just replacing humans in an ad hoc fashion. And all of our data says that 2027 is probably going to be peak employment globally. And as a result of AI, there's probably going to be about 17% of jobs displaced between 27 and 30. But with the way the demographics are going around the world, that's not actually very much. That's minimal. So getting it right, comprehensive strategy, making sure that your people, your culture is ready for the transformation so that you can move out of something that's more from assistive to more autonomous, if you will. If you don't get everybody on board, then it just gets stalled. Yeah.
So consensus building, methodical consensus building, super important.
Yeah, and the budget. You look at the flow of money. I mean, we've seen just under $50 billion flow of AI-related investment in the last 12 months. We're probably over the next 3 years, we're looking at about 124 to 125 billion. If you don't get all those budgets under control and focus on real business problems, then you're just going to be in a tailspin all the time.
Yeah. So, we've talked a little bit about AI is touching everything, and to your point, there's not one decision maker in an organization. So Ben, how do boards and executive teams, how have you seen them balance a sense of urgency, I've got to do something with AI, balance that sense of urgency with a long-term vision when it comes to AI strategy and implementation?
Yeah, that's a great question. The urgency to do something is real, right? A lot of companies and a lot of executives are feeling and experiencing the pressure. What are we doing with AI? Go do something with AI. We've heard the mantra, the example recently of a leader who said, I want to have 200 agents in production. Well, to what end? So back to your point. There's definitely real urgency, but there's very much a slow down to move more quickly, because moving quickly in the wrong direction is very problematic. Either the initiative fails, or you put it out there and it's not adopted, it's not successful because you weren't thinking through the change management required for it to be successful. And there are always very widespread organizational implications of effective AI. We worked with a company that put AI features into their products and released them through the latest update and did no changes to training, implementation, or customer service. And it basically resulted in negative NPS scores from people's experience with the product because they had no idea what they were dealing with. So I definitely think, there is a real urgency to move. There is a real fear and threat of, not moving. What happens if we sit still, sit on our heels? Are we gonna, are two people in a garage gonna come disrupt our industry? Will our competitors get there ahead of us? Those things are all very real. But, I do think that intentionality in how you move is critical. And that's where, again, sort of the slow down to speed up thing comes from. The other thing is, I think we're currently trapped in a way of thinking about AI that tends to be very initiative or solution focused. And so one of the things I advocate for quite a bit with companies is, the best way to think about this is to think about a whole portfolio approach to AI solutions, because they really are everywhere in the organization, in the customer ecosystem, you name it, AI is going to touch it. And if we're solely focused on one or two solutions, then we tend to put too much emphasis on the success or failure of those solutions. It also makes it difficult to invest in what I call the more foundational requirements of doing AI well, which is like, is your data ready? Do you have to invest heavily in your data engineering and data hygiene for it to be ready to do AI well? What your people, are they upskilled? Is there change management required or cultural change, which can be a massive undertaking? And what needs to change to support it if it's customer facing, to the point I was making a moment ago. So all those investments are required whether you're supporting one AI solution or 100 AI solutions. And so thinking about the longer term in terms of what are all the investments we have to make and how do we think about the ROI across them is an important, I think, perspective. The other thing is it's diversifying, right? So if you have 100 applications in the wild and a few of them fail, it doesn't mean that your AI program failed, right? It means that that's probably normal, right? It means not everything is going to be a raging success. It's also important, I think, because it's in the aggregate that we're going to see the real impact of these initiatives on a company's bottom and top line.
Fascinating. So you mentioned 100 applications, which to me translates into a governance requirement, right? And I've heard you say that you frame governance as a constraint enabler and an engine of sustainable innovation. And Forrester's data shows that trust is the top inhibitor of AI agents achieving autonomy. So question for Keith, do you have examples of AI governance models that both mitigate risk and unlock value at the same time? You've seen that in action.
Not a lot. The more regulated or rules-based an industry is, the easier it actually is to get scale with AI right now, which seems counterintuitive, like financial services. 30% of the world's tech spend is in financial services, just ahead of healthcare. And you look at that industry, like early on, even in marketing circumstances, every CMO or CEO is like, hell no, do not use AI on any of my things, because they're risk averse. Whereas what's interesting is that now that we've had a little time, those highly regulated industries are actually finding the use cases because they can govern it, because they have so many sets of rules. And the machines are really good at keeping track of the rules to get execution. So certainly healthcare, customer care applications, they're starting to scale everywhere with our healthcare clients. Banking is doing a really great job of starting to deploy AI. Insurance, insurance companies aren't going and saying, hey, I'm going to fire 5,000 people and replace it with AI. No, they're going to do 5,000 more applications to sell more loans. And that's going pretty well.
Ben, what's your thought on governance, and how can governance, a governance structure, governance plan, accelerate AI innovation and not inhibit it?
Yeah, so we hear this a lot, primarily because governance has a an assumption kind of inherent in the word that you're controlling something. And so there is a risk management, focused aspect of governance that I think we all need to be mindful of, right? I mean, doing AI responsibly is absolutely critical. But in a lot of organizations, that's where it stops. And so what happens is governance becomes seen as a constrictor of innovation. So you get this organizational friction between the people that are trying to innovate and the people that are trying to control or mitigate. And it doesn't have to be that way. It's kind of an artifact of the way that we have thought about, governing legacy technologies like, cyber, right? Things like that. There's really not much of a universe in which cyber is an enabler. It has enabling properties, but that's because we've kind of reverse engineered them so that it's not, just such a blocker. But for innovation to happen, it has to be done in a way that is within the bounds of effective governance, within the guardrails that are put forward, but it also has to be supported. And if you do both things, in other words, if you have a governance function that embraces that balance and puts out the investments in enabling functions, literacy, centers of excellence to internalize and process potential innovations, then you can kind of break down those legacy frictions between innovation and governance. So I haven't seen many great examples of it. We've certainly been advocating for it quite a bit with our clients. I put something very much like this in place at the Internal Revenue Service, where they were trying to really foster federated innovation, because the people at the front lines were the ones with the best ideas, but they had no idea how to get them into production or even to be considered as a possible idea. And so we created pipelines and investment models and all these things to help those ideas find purchase and enter production. And doing that at the same time that we're governing the nature of the experimentation and the extent of their use, I think was absolutely critical. So it was definitely a success there.
So I had a client once very recently say that this stuff would all be really easy if humans weren't involved. But we've seen that AI success depends on talent, culture, and data, right? And Forrester shows that 77% of leaders rely on cross-functional teams for AI governance, which is a pretty big number.
It's huge.
Cross-functional team. So, Keith, have any of your clients built out? How does it manifest? Does it look like an AI center of excellence? How do those teams come together? 77% cross-functional. What does that look like?
It's mixed. Places that it works really well is, again, once you focus on a use case that you know that you want to derive value from it, not just efficiency. All my research mostly represents consumer-facing companies, big B2C. I'm an ag guy, so Christian and I met each other. What it looks like for really great CPG firms right now is that, believe it or not, the CMO is taking the role. And they have a body of folks that are actually applying AI to all things from audience segmentation to their digital experiences to media and such. And in a particular use case like that, it's their agency partners, the leadership agency, it's the CMO. They're great partnerships with the CIO or the CTO or whoever manages those experiences, where they're leveraging AI for awesome personalization or any of that stuff. And so it's really like having that body of leadership that is applied to an application. In my example, advertising and marketing. It's very easy to wrap your head around where you can gain benefits for that. And you know that you need your partners that are involved, you need your CMO, you need your internal technology teams, and those that are commanding a line of business, those experiences, those applications, whether it be a website or mobile, what have you. You get those leaders together, applied to that use case, and it really works. The rest of the Fortune 500 is scrambling because, like I said, all of our data says that every technology decision involves at least 4 more leaders. In upwards of 9. Like the farther you get to being an enterprise or a B2B organization, you could have 9 to 12 people involved in a tech decision. Now, when you think about AI, if you look at the top IT initiatives of any company right now, every IT decision has an AI implication. So that just scales a mess. So again, focus on the use case, find the leaders that can actually make real decisions, and go there.
That's great. And Ben, what leadership traits have you seen best support scaling AI responsibly?
Oh, that's a great question. Leadership traits.
Yeah.
One thing I think is critical is, again, back to slow down to speed up, right? Don't get fooled by the urgency. Don't be fooled by the hype, right? I mean, look past what you're hearing in the news and what the technology looks like it can do, and really lean into what should we be doing, right? And educate yourself, right? Because a lot of these technologies are very accessible. A lot of our CEOs of companies that we work with have played with ChatGPT or Claude. Now, in some cases, they've done some pretty abominable things with those, but that's where you're only going to understand that either through leaning into what can this technology do, what are the pitfalls associated with it. But back to Keith's point, at the organizational level, AI is really challenging traditional organizational structures, right? Because it doesn't fit neatly into any of the existing ones, right? For a lot of reasons. The biggest one, though, being that it touches and has implications for every part of the organization. And it has implications for the top line and the bottom line. And that's kind of unprecedented. But what it does mean is that no one person is going to be able to effectively govern or ensure responsible AI. And so what I would say as far as a leadership trait, is don't fall into the hubris that, you can make these decisions on your own and independently and have them be maximally effective. You're going to have to lean on other people. You're going to have to learn what you don't know, admit what you don't know, which is honestly the first step to learning. That can be hard for especially leaders at this point in time in AI's evolution, because you got to where you are by doing something really well over time, and now a lot of people are back on their heels with AI, and it's challenging their confidence in am I equipped to lead in this new era? And so having humility, having vulnerability to say what don't I know and where do I need help is absolutely critical.
Our Future of Work team studies leadership effectiveness. In the last survey, over 65% of employees said that they do not have the leadership in place for the next 1 to 3 years.
Oof.
So there's a lack of confidence and trust, not just in the technology, but the leaders to make good decisions. If I oversimplify, it's once a week that we'll have a leadership go to one of our analysts and say, I need to get rid of 10,000 people over the next 5 years. And I need to use AI to do it. Like, not thinking about the cultural implications, what's going on, why are we really doing it? And those asks are coming from leaders who just are oversimplifying what AI has the capacity to do. Mm-hmm. It's not about just removing humans from it. It's about, well, how do you really apply it to your business strategy? Get the top line growth. Don't worry about the replacing bodies quite yet. Look for real world applications. And there's not enough leaders that are truly thinking that through. Mm-hmm. They're just going for productivity. That's the number one AI can do is productivity. And that's not the first thing to grasp onto.
Yeah, it does seem like there's a headline a day that AI is replacing workers. Ben, what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think two things. One, the hype is bigger than the realization, right? It's a lot harder to replace people than you would think. And companies that come to us and say, and this is very few, that say this is what they want to do, we want to replace people, we either challenge it up front, like, that's kind of a limited perspective. Like, there are other things you can do with productivity gains, like expand into new markets or scale faster, or expand your customer service for greater stickiness. I mean, it's limitless. But I think, there's still, among especially public companies, this quarter-by-quarter imperative to improve results and financial performance. And this is appealing to that sweet spot of, oh, I can use AI now to do better this quarter. And it just isn't that simple. The other thing that I think is interesting about all these headlines is it assumes that the AI is, the best use of AI is to basically substitute for a person. Whereas what we see more often is the best use of AI is to augment what people do, to really lean into the synergistic potential of people who really see AI as a complementary part of their team that can do things they can't, that enables them to do things that they maybe haven't in the past, but they can now because they're working with the AI, and really make the sum greater than the whole of the parts.
Yeah. Beautiful. Let's pivot to one. So these next two questions are going to get harder.
Uh-oh. I was told there'd be no math.
No math, no math. Well, we're talking about ROI. Ben, there's got to be some math in there.
Yeah.
You've stressed that traditional ROI metrics are brittle for AI investments. And Forrester finds leaders are shifting from efficiency metrics to customer lifetime value and overall business impact. So Keith, how have you seen your clients measure the business value and impact of AI investments, providing that evolution from efficiency to CLV is actually happening?
Moving to more quality measurements. How good is our customer care? How satisfied are our employees? Where growth? What does growth look like?
Yeah.
So, $1 in should yield $2. Very simple, right? It's like, so if I'm investing, in a thing, we should be able to improve our customer experience. Lifetime value is a big deal. It actually costs a whole lot more, and I'm speaking for kind of the clients that I represent. It costs a whole lot more to acquire a customer than it does to keep them. So looking at those metrics of customer retention, again, employee satisfaction, getting more qualitative in that analysis, and then top line growth, for sure. And that's where it should have gone in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And Ben, two-part question. So we've heard today too, it's difficult to measure ROI. So first of all, how do you advise clients on coming up with ROI metrics for AI projects, AI implementations? And then the second part of that is, what's the future, if there is a future of ROI, where do we head? Where do you see things going when we're talking about AI ROI?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in terms of measurement, the biggest challenge that I see is not that it's hard to measure the ROI of AI necessarily. It's that it requires you to measure things you've never measured before. And it's putting that in place. And a lot of times when we come into a company, they want us to sort of model the ROI in advance so that they can either, as executives who are sponsoring the engagement or in selling it and evangelizing it internally to like a board of directors, they want to have a prediction or a model or an estimate of what the ROI is going to be before they commit. And again, as I said before, that can be challenging when there are lots of foundational investments that you have to make just to do the first thing that can then be amortized over future projects, but are all kind of born by that first one. But the other challenge is that there are always intangibles, right? And the intangibles are very hard to measure. So, in one case, we worked with a client that, we were able to fundamentally disrupt their industry by, taking what was a 2-day process down to seconds. And no one else in the industry was able to copy that, to compete. And it fundamentally changed their valuation and opened up opportunities for revenue from new clients and scale that they hadn't had before. And those were things that you can say, this is what we hope will happen, and this is why we think this is a valuable investment, but it's really hard to model. I mean, so when you're talking about things like, competitive differentiation, that's a hard thing to model.
Yeah.
An even harder thing to model is, what if we don't do anything and we get disrupted, right? Somebody gets there ahead of us and we can't catch up. Those are difficult things. And there was a second part. Or did I answer them both?
I think maybe, but if you look forward, what?
Oh, looking forward.
Yeah, looking forward. Do you think that we'll get to a place where things are more monetizable, trackable, measurable? Are we in a state of confusion right now in monitoring and defining ROI, and will that change?
Absolutely, yeah, and I do think it's temporary, because I think there's two things about AI. One is, because it's overlaying onto a lot of existing things that we do already, like it's new features in an existing product, and you're not necessarily measuring the right things about customer usage to be able to attribute the change in usage to that particular feature. But AI is forcing us to rethink, how are we measuring these things, and are we measuring them effectively enough? But AI also uses data, and so it's kind of put the onus back on data capture to say this is a source of value creation. So I think we're going to kind of see this virtuous cycle of we have to measure it to be able to understand what it's doing, and we want to measure it because then we can use it to improve our models and the application of AI.
This is off script.
Okay.
Is there potentially a direct correlation between ROI and AI taking action on a company's proprietary data versus a public set of data?
It's interesting because we advocate quite a bit that the most differentiated thing you can do from a competitive perspective is to model on your proprietary data. So I definitely think the ROI potential there is greater, but it also requires being very intentional about what's the extent of that differentiation, right? Can it be mimicked? How do you extend it and persist it, not just within the market, but over time? And I do think the ROI of those kinds of initiatives can be maximally impactful. But again, it's hard to measure because it's usually picked up in some measure of corporate valuation that you're like, what part of this is the AI or not? And the idea that you can look at the change in valuation before or after an AI implementation is going to go away. When you've got hundreds of models in deployment, you're not going to be able to say, well, that model is what led to that change in valuation. All that being said, there is, I think, for the less differentiated things, a cumulative potential that we haven't really seen in terms of companies tap into it at scale. And I think once we do, and we hear this all the time, right? Like, we put this LLM into production, into deployment within our organization, and we're just not seeing the promise of efficiency gains raining from the sky. Well, it takes, sometimes more time than that. It takes other related things that need to dovetail. It also takes literacy, so people understand how to capitalize on these things. So I think we will start to see that untapped at scale, and I think the ROI from it cumulatively can be impactful.
There's a nasty little overlay on all of that. Almost everything is traceable, but there is a huge lack of trust in what is being measured. We see it. I see it in with my marketing clients all the time. Is that marketers and CMOs is like they're like, we have all this data. Less than 10% of them actually report making any meaningful business decisions because they don't trust the measurement that they're actually getting back. That's mind-blowing, right? In this age of digital where almost everything is digital. Yet now this mix of first and third-party data, synthetic data, all the things are coming. So can you really trust the measurement that you're getting? That's a challenge, which is all the reasons why a lot of clients are focusing on their own proprietary and first-party data and getting rid of the other stuff.
Ben, could you speak briefly about the case that we worked on in the cruise industry? Because I think it's interesting around, we had a hypothesis of what the ROI would be. We did the engineering work, put it into production, and then started getting metrics back, to your point. Can you just speak briefly about that?
Yeah, so the idea was this is a company that runs all the spas on cruise ships. So if you have ever been on a cruise and you go to the spa and you get a massage, it was probably run by this company. And they also manage all the people who do this. And what they came to us with was they said, we think there's a way to use AI to increase revenue. And we were like, okay, well, let's talk through it. And we talked through it. And we're like, yeah, the challenge is, it's not on the demand side. It's on the management side. There's too much variance in the quality and sophistication of the people who are running these spas and doing the marketing and the demand generation, where a good spa manager can blow it out of the park and a bad one is struggling. So we were like, okay, so we're going to use AI to basically upskill everybody, to the next level. We're not going to make everybody an A player overnight, but we're going to take a D spa manager to a C. And when you aggregate that over all these cruises and all these spa engagements, it was very impactful, very positive ROI. So we implemented this, we put it into production, and we started to measure it using A/B testing. So some cruises would get the full, benefits of our solution. Other cruises got nothing. And then we measure the delta, and sure enough, it exceeded the metrics that we anticipated for it.
I'm not sure I would have put massages in the AI.
I know, right?
It's a little creepy.
Robot fingers.
Yeah.
Actually, they've got one down in, they've got a robot in Beacon Street, robot massage.
Oh, really?
Oh.
I think
Oh,
it's a couple more generations before it's any good.
yeah. I'm not surprised. Yeah.
That's a great example, though. Thank you for sharing
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
All right, one more thing. So Keith, I don't know, we haven't talked in, a couple of years, 3 years? Let's say we talk in 2 to 3 years. And this is a question that was in our roundtable discussion, which is really hard to answer. But in 3 years from now, say 2028, how do you envision the impact AI will have on customer experiences and customer expectations in the future?
3 years is probably, you look at the acceleration of just knowledge and understanding of AI just in the last 18 months, it's getting pretty good. We're going to move into, like I said, 2027 feels like that pivot year. It is prediction season for Forrester, so I can allude to some predictions. That we believe that 2027 is going to be, the year that people start to get their data right. Huge amount of investments in normalizing data, right? Whether that's data in media experiences, customer experiences, what have you. So I think we can safely say that a level of personalization in AI is definitely going to happen in 3 years, at which experiences are going to be personalized the way that we want them. Meaning that most of us will have some level of agentic or assistive things going on through that little handheld device that you're going all around and doing all your shopping through and everything. That we're probably there now where personalization, which seems kind of frivolous over the last 10 years, is going to be the personalization that you really want in the next 3 years. Customer experiences are definitely being enhanced. We're seeing that huge investments in customer experience and even in healthcare and patient care. I actually think that we're going to close the gap in the next 3 years. And I think most of us are going to be better off. We've been going through this transition for decades of being expected to do more with less capital. I actually don't think that our workforce is going to get smaller. I think that we're all just going to be better off. Because I think we were getting stretched in most industries. We were getting stretched on all these demands. I actually think that over the next 3 years, we're actually going to normalize, where we're actually going to feel like we're productive, and we can potentially be happier humans as a result of AI. I think we're going to get there. I think the real gains in autonomy is quite a ways out right now. So.
Man, I like the sounds of being happier. That sounds great.
I know,
Let's
right?
do that.
Let's just stop there.
Ben, follow on. So what will, say 3 years out, what will surprise us most about enterprise AI adoption?
Oh, that's interesting. I think someone was talking earlier about sort of the generational pace of change and how the delta between how fast generationally we can evolve to adapt to the technology and how fast the technology is moving. I think we're going to have to figure out some way to not try to keep up, right? We're never going to keep up with the pace of technology, but I think there are heuristics that we can start to develop about what makes a good human partner for AI. What does it mean to work effectively with AI? And how do I start to embody and embrace those behaviors? And it's not going to be how well do I understand the technology, right? Kind of like back to the EQ question, right? The people who we've seen that are the most successful with AI in a truly symbiotic way are the ones who can speak very clearly about what it does well, what it doesn't do well, and how they have learned to work within that. So I know I can rely on the AI to do a great job there, so I don't have to do it as much. I can free up cognitive load, or I can focus on other things, however you want to think about it. But there are still things that I have to do because I can't trust it yet in this particular area. And that's probably going to be a pretty granular mental evaluation of what that particular AI does. But I think we're also going to start, because of this proliferation, we're going to see people interacting with multiple AIs throughout the course of their work. And so they're going to have to be developing these models in real time, basically, about how to effectively work with them, and that will ultimately kind of transcend a lot of these different interactions. So I think we're going to learn back to, I think Ron was using the term metacognition, we're going to have to develop kind of metacognitive tools for how to work with AI effectively.
I agree. I mean, you have to remember that with any great innovation, the humans actually have to upgrade. And we're 7 to 10 years until basically a workforce will be coming into our markets, that will never have known the world without actually having some level of assistive or agentive in their lives. And so there's always, the humans have to follow the technology. And no matter how much money goes into the market between now and 2030, which is where our models end, you can put $150 billion in investment in AI into the market, but you actually have to get use out of it, and that's going to require a very specific kind of human that actually trusts, a very specific kind of leader that's actually able to deploy AI for good and not evil. So we're on that evolution too, no matter how fast this technology goes.
Beautiful.
Yep.
Was there anything I didn't ask that I should have to either one of you?
Ooh, that's a good question. We didn't get as much into, and I'll just talk to it quickly, but like the nature of AI strategy as it dovetails with your core business strategy. And this, I think, gets back to the question of what's real transformation versus, just slapping stuff on an old model, right? This really is an opportunity for us to lean into at the organizational level. What are the things that we've been doing that have helped create value and that we want to persist into the future? And what are the things that we've been doing either because we've just been doing them a lot or because we thought they needed to be done, but maybe don't add value anymore? And really using this as an opportunity to rethink how your organization creates value and how AI becomes a reflection of that, a mirror of that value creation mechanism.
No, I would double down on value. Start your strategy with what value are you creating? What is the benefit to your business strategically from a growth standpoint? But how can you enable a better group of employees that are there right now with these great technologies? We are in this age where about 50% or so of our strategy sessions with executives right now are on two subjects: leadership and alignment. So basically we're great, all these technologies are out here, but how do I learn to lead in this next generation of technology and AI? And how do I get everybody aligned so that we're making good choices to use the technology, both for our business and our existing employees?
That's actually perhaps the single biggest challenge to success within our client's ecosystem is getting and maintaining that alignment.
Yeah.
All right, let's pause there. Thank you so much, both. Let's open it up to questions. We've got about 10 minutes. Would you like the mic?
No, I don't think I need it.
Okay.
Mike Youssef from the SoundHound AI. Question for you, Keith. Earlier you had mentioned about 10% of AI deployments truly been successful and see real value, is there a mix of build versus buy? Is one more than the other in that 10%? And then also, is there a specific use case or AI application or department that is, of that 10%? Like, is there a trend that has seen success?
Yes. So to the build versus buy, there's a lot of co-creation that is actually creating success out there. Meaning, well, you have your partners here that are out there. Mostly successes are having a good partner so that they have access to the AI capability and talent. So meaning if you look at AI maturity, and we look at the enterprise, most companies say that they're very, immature with AI. For service providers, whether you're looking at an Accenture or Omnicom, a KUNGFU or other, more than 70% of those organizations say that they're AI mature. So leverage that capability and making sure that you're just not getting again in this pilot purgatory where there's all these little projects. Find a problem to solve, get a good partner, and get together. So I can speak to the advertising world, and everybody says like, oh, advertising, but like 40% of the GDP in the United States is impacted by advertising in one form or another. There is great use cases out there for in advertising now that we're getting over the governance and the indemnity issues with some of the the creative tools that are out there. Whereas like automotive, as an example, hundreds of millions of dollars is spent on advertising content at a tier 2 or tier 3 level, meaning like the silly little turntable ads that have like the APR on it and stuff like that. There's great projects going on right now where like that advertising that nobody wants to create anyway is being created at scale. Again, talk about some people that are happier in the market. There's a lot of creatives out there that are pretty happy about what's going on because there's a bunch of creative stuff that they just don't want to do. So there's great use cases out there. In that 10%, a lot of successes in banking, in trading going on right now. We are moving towards a world that I don't think any stock is going to be traded by a human, in short order. So you're going to have people giving you advice, but the trades are not going to be happening by a human, and this is going to happen within months. That's happening. So financial services, good things going on in healthcare, and then advertising. Those are the great use cases out there right now. Those are the ones that are part of the 10%.
Any other questions?
You kind of glossed over this, but data governance strikes me as quite a big issue. Do you think people are actually going to start really, I guess the question is, are there organisations that are probably doing best practice? How are most people approaching it? Are they leaving their data in place and kind of then putting algorithms about trust quality? Or what are the trends in that space?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It's definitely, AI's changed the way people think about their data, right? And AI, it's amazing how many executives we work with who have no idea the condition of their data. So, what'll happen is we'll go in and they'll say, oh, I've got 20 years of all this rich data. And then we go in and we find out it's either garbage or that they throw it out every year and the CEO didn't know, which makes it hard to do anything with it. But really starting not just thinking of data as a historical asset, but as something that is regularly generated by the company's operations and needs to be curated as an asset for the purpose of AI. I think that's going to be the big change that we see. I think the other one is going to be agentic, because agentic has the potential to be unleashed across data sets and systems in a way that we are not currently equipped. I mean, I don't mean we, but I mean most companies are not currently equipped to govern because they're not really processing the implications of giving those agents access unfettered and allowing them to pull disparate data from multiple sources to come up with a proposed answer or solution.
I think just to add on to that, the chaos has been unleashed for a little while now. We're 2 decades ago, you might think that like you're probably like 80% of your spend is being controlled in your CIO or your IT, organization. Now today, over 50% of your data and technology investment is actually not coming from there. It's coming from other places, which is why the alignment is an issue, is because there's a lot of companies that don't know where their data is.
I mean, outside of the
Yeah,
organization.
outside of IT, So you have the unstructuredness has actually increased over the years, where even, CMOs and HR executives like have huge tech budgets, and every time you do something, data is being created. If you want something really creepy, if any of you go in Copilot, if your IT took advantage of all the Copilot, go ahead and ask Copilot for some data. Just be random. And it will go find pieces of data if everything is on SharePoint and all the things. Like it pulls stuff out. Like, I didn't even know that happened. I had that.
Yeah.
That is creepy.
Yeah.
That is creepy. We got time for 1 or 2 more questions.
I have a question for Keith, actually. I was actually surprised to hear your analysis on financial services, healthcare, and advertising specifically being really the 3 kind of hot areas in AI right now. Particularly in the advertising piece, it's use case rich, right?
Content.
Yeah, content. So I don't dispute that whatsoever. I'm really curious about the business impact that's currently being measured. Are you seeing people actually have these use cases and rationalize ROI or measure business impact against them? Or is it more just about this is the area that the use cases are coming to? We have yet to actually measure the value. And how are people measuring value in the advertising spaces?
In advertising, there's definitely the productivity and the effectiveness. There's actually a pretty good balance in there. Advertising has been getting crushed for decades on just squeezing every ounce out of your agencies or your media companies, where they've been this proliferation of content. They've been asked to do way too much content with way too little labor. So that's the immediate thing that, like, I used automotive as an example. Again, nobody wants to do that tier 2, tier 3 media or whatever. So there's real value in that, because not only can you actually create more content with these tools, but you can actually create the right content at scale. And so that's a huge benefit, to advertising, because the channels are not going to go away. They're just going to keep getting more, and at some point you just can't create enough content. So that's a pretty easy one. The other one, and we kind of touched on it, like the unstructured mess that is all the data that comes with media and advertising. You can actually do real analysis. Even the unstructured stuff, you can actually talk to your data cubes. You can get insights on what's working and what's not in a way that you just couldn't do from the 100 PowerPoints nobody ever read anyway on how effective your campaign was.
Do you see any trend lines in terms of labor force impact in advertising? I think of the junior designer. Are they just not hiring anymore because they can generate their own content without having to hire that junior designer? What does a junior designer who's graduating college this year do when they're walking into the ad agency where generative AI is really permeating?
So I said our data says that 2027 is probably going to be at peak. Like, we're actually growing in labor for marketing services overall. That's when it's going to get a little tricky. And my personal point of view is slightly more tragic than what I'm saying when you actually put that. The copywriter is going to be making a ton of money over the next 20 years. They are becoming more valuable, and if you have agencies, you better put your arms around your copywriters, because they're going to cost twice as much over the next couple of years. But you're right. We have this concept of, like, certain industries have a moat around them as a result of AI. So if you look at advertising, the moat or the barrier to entry, because the apprentice model has basically gotten blown up over the last couple decades in media and advertising, where those junior people can't come and learn from those senior people. Now those senior people are bypassing even needing the junior people, because they have another tool when they're trying to cling on to their jobs. right? And so in advertising, the moat is getting, because it's a mature industry, it's actually getting greater and greater. So I wouldn't send your kid to ad school. But then there's other industries where, the moat's actually, much shallower. We're not doing a good enough job in healthcare to think that there's not a whole lot of new humans and new technology could actually, do good in that industry. So there's almost zero moat. You actually bring on the AI in healthcare, right? Whereas advertising, there is some risk.
Yeah. Keith, I'm curious that you think copywriters are going to get more and more expensive. There's so many people on the client side who are like, I don't need copywriters anymore. I don't need to pay copywriters anymore. I have these tools, and the tools will produce what I need. Right? I have ChatGPT, and it can write me perfectly good copy and perfectly good content, even though we all know it's mostly garbage.
If you can trust it, but there's also the flip side of that is that I was a copywriter by trade. I've sold you guys some stuff that you shouldn't have bought in the first place because I wrote good copy. My ability as being a copywriter by trade actually gives me an innate ability to talk to models in a way that you may not, right? I'm intuitive. Creativity is more valuable than anything. There's the idea that creativity is more powerful than knowledge every time. We're getting to an area where your knowledge is trapped in that box. It's training all the time. It's how creatively I talk to these models that's going to yield me, better
Asking
outputs.
the right question.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, you ask anybody, it's like there's not a better answer. There's just a better question out there, and we're kind of in that age.
Yeah, I want to add on that. Advertisement, probably there are tools now that can produce videos and all the graphic stuff very quickly, very nicely. But the prompt is not that trivial. So if you are going to do something like, let's say it's a video, you want to know, you need to know the language of how the lens you will use, the position from where you are going to do the scenes and all of that. And for that you need somebody that knows the language and knows how to write properly in order to get good results. Anyone can put whatever they want there, but the videos that they are going to produce or the images or whatever are not going to be great. So I agree with you completely.
Yeah, I mean, at Forrester we have a great use case. It's like there's a lot of people saying that like, oh, research is going to get destroyed, because of all the things. And it's like, well, if you can trust these LLMs, that's fine. But we are trusted data. From a scale standpoint, there's about 20,000 reports that our AI is training on all the time. You can now talk to it. We call it Izola, where you can actually just get insights back from it. But the reality is those 20,000 reports were created by 300 really smart people who are now training data. And if you want to get really good answers, you still want that analyst because that analyst knows how to talk to our AI, And all of you have been asking us to write more research. We haven't had time. We're at, most organizations, particularly in the service industry, you get to a point where like you can't add more people, because you can't hire enough talented people to get more scale. We are in error. It's like you have a ton of smart employees that you'll get better output from by result of taking all this rote stuff off and allowing them to ask better questions of your models.
Yeah, 100%.
That's awesome.
All right, we need to wrap. I want to thank you both so much. That was very valuable. Great conversation. Thank you.
Yep.